1987's Predator might be the most perfect and visceral action horror film ever made. I wouldn't throw the word masterpiece around lightly, but Predator's right up there as one of my all-time favourites, and it's a classic benchmark of action filmmaking. The film's setting, cadence, and pacing are meticulously crafted, with each bit of dialogue a sparkling gem. The setup is swift, the introductions are quick, and the film travels the road of your typical action-adventure before segueing into a sci-fi horror slasher featuring muscular dudes instead of helpless high school heroines. Predator not only stands at the apex of action movies, but also cleverly deconstructs and subverts the genre, showcasing a film ahead of its time that only seems to improve with each viewing. It's a premise which started out as a joke. Executives pitching ideas for Stallone's next villain suggested Rocky fight an alien, which then became the basis of Predator. What's surprising is that on release, most critics dismissed Predator as just another example of generic action fluff. The LA Times called it one of the emptiest, feeblest, most derivative scripts ever made. And while it's possible to watch Predator 100 times and see nothing but a prosaic action story, hidden beneath the surface is an intelligent film with a profound level of subtext. We start out with a team of organised and well-armed special forces recruited under false pretenses. They track down an enemy base, blow it to hell, killing all the bad guys without breaking a sweat. It's your typical 80s archetypal action cheese. Then we're hit with the greatest joke of all time before the film swerves hard. The hunters soon become the hunted. Picked off one by one, this team of tough guys are suddenly scared shitless by something they can neither understand nor handle. Whatever's out there isn't just randomly killing them. There's a tactical precision to its violence. They have camouflage. It uses camouflage. They have guns and knives. It uses a shoulder cannon and blades. It deliberately matches weapons, or goes hand to hand if they're unarmed. The filmmakers knew how to tease out the presence of the Predator, keeping it hidden in a never-ending maze of trees long enough to feed the suspense. The concealed nature of the Predator heightens the impact of its predilection for psychological warfare, the skinned bodies, the scattered entrails, and announcing itself with momentary flashes of its eyes, serve as examples of its deliberate psychological games. The point of view shots likewise put the audience in the perspective of the alien watching the team. We see in its voice recordings the aliens mimicking them. And just like the team, the Predator's also a chameleon, changing to fit the environment and adapting tactics depending on its prey. The casting of the team, and particularly Schwarzenegger, is pitch perfect. While Arnie arguably plays Arnie in all of his movies, physically and performance-wise, this is literally peak Schwarzenegger. He exudes a level of charisma which bleeds onto the screen, and the film simply wouldn't be the same without him. Predator still holds up as a visually stunning film. McTiernan's prowling, fluid camera creates a claustrophobic and disorienting visual palette that shifts and evolves, stripping the soldiers bare against a constantly unsettling environment. The use of negative space draws the audience in, mirroring the character's constant vigilance for an unseen threat lurking in the shadows. The lush greens contrast beautifully with the harsh reds of violence. The shimmering fog and muddy browns create an effect that's both beautiful and foreboding. And all the while, Alan Silvestri's timeless orchestra and adrenaline-pumping musical score further drives this unrelenting tension. The arrival of Dutch and his team is one of the most simple and effective openings to any action film I've ever seen. A simple establishing shot provides deliberate shorthand showing that these aren't your regular soldiers of fortune, but rather a specialist team, assembled when needed, high-end mercs available for the right reasons, and the right price. From the moment the chopper opens its doors, there's a sense that you really get to know each and every one of Schwarzenegger's team of half-assed mountain boys. I love how each man dresses in a style of his own, setting each character apart as an individual. It's a clever attention to detail which provides instant depth to each personality. There's Blaine Cooper, Mr. Casual in blue jeans, sunglasses, and tucked-in MTV t-shirt. Max fully suited up and ready for business. Billy in tracksuit. Poncho and Hawkins wear simple t-shirts and jeans. And of course, Arnold, magnificent and resplendent, in a standout red Ralph Lauren polo, chomping his trademark stogie. Dutch casually exits the chopper, accompanied by a rousing musical score, announcing him as an elemental force to be reckoned with. The man, despite the team, is a standalone and otherworldly entity. His defined muscular build establishes his place in the dominance hierarchy, adding meat to the already tough-as-nails persona. There's no salute to the general, just a friendly, respectful handshake. The general acknowledges Dutch as an equal, referring to a shared past. Dylan drinks ominously alone in a dark corner, implying a mysterious closed-off character. Dutch immediately rags on him for this fucking tire business and pushing too many pencils. They're clearly old friends and rivals, judging by their mid-air arm wrestling contest. While Dylan's the only man who matches Dutch in terms of sheer physicality, even his place in the pecking order is quickly determined by raw physical power. Dylan nominally outranks Dutch by way of superficial military semantics only. The backhanded CIA insult reinforces the conflicted company man that Dylan's now become. It's a subtle acknowledgement that they're now both playing on two very different teams with very different agendas and values. This becomes key later on, because although technically in charge, Dutch realises that following Dylan's orders will eventually get everyone killed. His only option then is to break rank and take control. In addition to his strength, the scene also establishes Dutch's impressive perceptive abilities, his keen and observant mind for intelligence filtering. Another favourite scene is the chopper delivery set against Little Richard's Long Tall Sally. The song plays through the team's portable stereo, showing that these guys are so badass, they even bring their own pump-up soundtrack to a fight. In a mere 3 minutes, we witness the effortless interplay and camaraderie expanding our understanding of the characters, their dynamic, and their pecking order. There's Hawkins with his bad jokes, geeky glasses and lightning-fast reflexes. Billy the laconic Native American, who doesn't get the jokes but has one of the best laughs on film. There's the scarily intense Mac, played by Bill Duke with his 1,000-yard stare and dry shaving quirk. There's the slouch hat wearing tobacco-spitting arrogant loudmouth Blaine. Dylan, the eager-to-fit-in newcomer, disliked by everyone. Poncho represents the audience surrogate, an everyman caught up in the action who prompts exposition and explanation. He makes observations, sets up jokes, and asks questions as both a witness to the action and a conduit for new information. Schwarzenegger sits off camera, present yet distinguished from these interactions. I love the chewing tobacco scene. Blaine first offers the pouch to Mac, who refuses, then the coy smile while he dips his hand in for another helping. He offers the bag to Billy, and then Poncho. Dylan is excluded except for the spittle expelled across his boot. The famous sexual Tyrannosaurus line is followed by Poncho's "strap this onto your sorry sore ass, Saurus," is one of the all-time best comebacks. The exaggerated male stereotypes highlight the film's setup of hypermasculinity and its eventual subversion. The physical size and strength of the characters is likewise reflected in the types of weapons they carry. Dutch and Blaine are the biggest guys physically, so they get the biggest guns. Billy and Mac are fairly large guys, so they've got SP1 Mossberg 500 combos and M60 machine guns respectively. Hawkins and Dylan have smaller and less imposing Heckler and Koch. Dylan, while physically impressive, wields the same smaller gun, befitting his pencil pusher status. Poncho's not a huge guy, but he carries the HK-94 with a grenade launcher mod attached. Another favourite scene is when Mac commandeers the minigun after Blaine is killed, wounding the Predator on the run. I love that each man just joins the firing line, no questions asked, indicating that established mutual trust between soldiers. The Predator meanwhile sits in a tree, out of harm's way, watching them waste their ammo. While highlighting peak bravado, it's also a scene created to quietly ridicule the over-the-top love of gun culture. As McTiernan explained, the whole point was to show the impotence of all the guns, which was exactly the opposite of what I believed I was being hired to sell. It also parallels the Jim Hopper firefight scene, recounted earlier by Billy, indicating Hopper's team firing wildly in all directions at an unseen enemy which eventually skins them all alive. The long-standing trope of using well-defined muscle mass to visually convey warrior strength is also reflected in some intriguing visuals of its own. Initially, most of the team members keep their arms concealed, except for Dylan's exposed forearms. After the gorilla fight, Dutch ditches his jacket, and Billy's guns are now on full display. Ventura shows one arm, replete with bandage concealing its true size. This may be reflective of the amusing behind-the-scenes rivalry of Ventura with Schwarzenegger over their respective arm sizes. Schwarzenegger concocted a practical joke, asking the wardrobe department to lie about his arm size in order to win a bet from Ventura. Ventura was duped into believing his arms were bigger than Arnold's, which may have influenced the on-screen bandaging so that Arnie's bulky arms go unchallenged on screen. As they move through the jungle, Hawkins and Blaine's arms are fully revealed moments before their deaths. Mac's arms stay covered throughout all his scenes, befitting his concealed nature. Dylan and Billy all have their muscles on show in times for their deaths too. While setting the predator traps, Dutch and Dylan are naked from the waist up. Traps all set, Dilly, Billy, Ramirez and Dutch are down to vests, while Dutch's slightly smaller vest accentuates his Herculean bulk. Muscle comparisons established, Dutch is clearly spotlighted as the team's physical superior, and it's only he that gets to show his muscles in subsequent bodybuilding style poses. Despite its reputations as one of the manliest movies ever made, much has been written about the homoerotic undertones of Predator. While some theories are a stretch, it was still the director's intention to parody the posturing of the action genre as much as celebrate it. The movie's book adaptation was written by Paul Manette, an openly gay writer whose partner was dying of AIDS at the time of writing. His conception of the scary, silent, hidden killer of men served as a fitting metaphor for that era's deadly AIDS epidemic. Some of the scenes also provide more pause for thought. Billy suck-starting the tree vine and letting the white fluid run down his face. The singular music track Long Tall Sally, sung by a gay little Richard about casual sex with a trans prostitute, along with the eyebrow-raising dynamic between characters Mac and Blaine. The earlier double entendre of Poncho telling Blaine to strap the grenade launcher to his sorry sore ass cuts directly to a shot of Mac shaving, while Billy's laugh echoes in the background, leaving the viewer to fill in the blanks. While it's conceivable a hunter would try taking out the strongest threat first, the order is reversed in Predator, with another popular fan theory contending that the characters are killed in the order of their masculinity. The smaller frame, glasses-wearing Hawkins is the obvious first choice. Less imposing physically than the others, Hawkins is absent for most of the guerrilla camp raid, carries the smallest gun, and makes off-colour pussy jokes. Ventura's Blaine is next. There's his questionable perceptual and intellectual ability as a soldier. Physically large, he's the slowest moving on account of his weapon. His reliance on brute force, macho posturing, and overconfidence in his physicality and firepower results in the body soon ending up debodied. Poncho's not technically killed outright, but he's taken out at the fight after an ironic failure to follow his own advice to duck when hit by the swinging log trap. Poncho's observant and resourceful, but he's also one of the few to overtly display reactive fear or emotion, and he reverts to the psychological security of religion at times. Mac and Dylan are equally given poetic send-offs. Ventura's "You lose it here, you're in a world of hurt" speech foreshadows Mac's descent into madness. Mac's psychological unravelling is displayed by his constant shaving, stunned trances, and his soliloquy made to the moon. By the end, he's singing unhinged gibberish in wild pursuit of the predator, revealing his position, a move he earlier threatened Dylan for. Ultimately, Mac, the silent and stealthy killer, is dispatched while trying to sneak on the predator. The creature cuts his name into Mac's forehead with his laser sight, leaving him a twitching and bleeding mess. Dylan's pursuit of Mac is a last-ditch shot at redemption. His lies and manipulations have dropped them all into this meat grinder purely for his own professional gain. And it's his non-masculine trait of denying reality that's obstructed him from fully seeing the predator, and thus the situation with psychological eyes wide open. His rescue of Mac is the bad habit picked up from Dutch. He knows it's a futile move, bound to end badly, but Dylan's getting even is his means of squaring the karmic ledger for betraying an old friend, dropping the CIA tie noose that binds him, and at the very least, dying a soldier's death. Dylan's previous posturing with the mid-air arm wrestling contest also telegraphs his own execution. The Predator shoots off the very same arm which continues firing impotently on the ground, before it literally eviscerates the now unarmed man with his blade. We build up to an expected showdown between Billy and the Predator. The log bridge was a great setup. Billy picked a place the Predator is forced to cross, with no branches over the ravine for it to use. Resigned to his inevitable death, he discards the gun and draws his knife, throwing down the gauntlet in the most primal way possible. Billy may have assumed that the trophies being collected was the skins, and so cuts his own, denying the Predator a chance to draw first blood. He marks his skin in a show of defiance, accepting of his fate. Calling on the power of his belief and tradition contained in his amulet, he wraps it around his weapon hand to guide his machete. While everyone else is gratuitously killed on screen, the atavistic Billy's death is unseen, even dignified, and we later see the Predator honouring the trophy of this kill. His primal screams echo as both an eternal war cry and his painful evisceration. By killing off the characters who aren't on the same physical level as Dutch, the Predator has in essence trimmed away the fat, leaving Dutch alone to carry the fight forward. It's here the pace changes, culminating in an almost wordless final sequence where the conflict between man and nature comes full circle. Dutch first undergoes a complete rebirth, dipping himself in water, a baptism of sorts, and then in clay, from which the first man was formed, to be returned to a nascent form of existence, stripped of the typical action hero accoutrements, along with any bravado and ego. Gone are the team, the guns, the cheesy one-liners. Dutch is even bereft of his once beloved stogies. The impotent guns, like the muscle and macho bravado, are ultimately redundant. Reduced to a primordial state, Dutch ends the film as a primitive jungle warrior, building a series of traps while the Predator cleans some skulls. He initiates the final battle with perhaps the best Tarzan roar ever captured on celluloid. While the Predator relies primarily on its technological sophistication, Dutch counters each of its technologies with a primitive analogue. He uses a bow and arrow instead of a laser, mud instead of a cloaking system. In the cerebral conflict which follows, the old cliché "know thy enemy" is key. Dutch's ability to gather intelligence, observe and predict the Predator's next move tips the deadly chess game in his favour. It's the quintessential archetype typified by Homer's Odysseus, who uses the power of a dedicated and observant mind in his continuous battle against literal gods, whom he would have no chance of defeating if he instead relied on strength and military prowess. The Predator eventually forgoes its tech to prove its superiority by fighting Dutch one-on-one. Dutch doesn't hide his pain or fear. Observed from the Predator's point of view, we hear the feminine high-pitched whimpering of our hero's cries. Eschewing any performative bravado, Dutch's masculinity derives from his ability to keep his cool and adapt on instinct. He turns the tables by using a thousands-of-year-old piece of technology in the form of an oversized version of the deadfall trap. Finally defeated, Dutch stands over the Predator and demands, "What the hell are you?" The Predator responds in a flat computer-simulated voice, "What the hell are you?" Dutch, looking at the alien, is looking at himself. They see each other as mutual monsters. Dutch is the Predator, an expendable asset, hired as an assassin to secretly rain death on a distant, less well-armed people. A rescue team? He's been morally deluding himself. They may look like heroes, but they're just a different kind of bad guy. And this is why Dutch hesitates dropping the rock on the wounded Predator's face, finishing the job. He sees the reflection of his shadow self mirrored in the Predator's eyes and words. He's certainly not the same man he was at the beginning of the movie. No longer the cocky action hero. Maybe he finally recognizes the subconscious savage darkness in man, nature, and himself. When he's rescued, the once grinning hyper-muscle soldier is nothing but a broken shell. His empty stare, hollow and haunted, scarred both physically and emotionally. We hear the military stirrings of the funeral music taps rise in the background. Is it honouring the defeated Predator, or Arnold who's now joined the ranks of the living dead? He may have survived, but it's a Pyrrhic victory with nothing gained. He's lost his entire team, arguably his best friends. Perhaps he's also lost his faith, purpose, and hope. The sobering helicopter ride bookends a downbeat but realistic conclusion, flipping the typical action movie tropes on its head. Even though Anna is present at the end, they played it just right. There's zero allusions to romance, no victorious last kiss, no hard rock anthem playing. The screen fades to black and the credits roll.